Just a few of the things that are in the downloads or on the blog that you can access is the session agenda, the PowerPoint slides that we'll be going through, the handout 2, attributes of formative assessment reading, which was part of your asynchronous pre-session. Handout 3, enabling factors supporting formative assessment implementation, which is also the asynchronous pre-session. Handout 4, fix and implementation stages overview. And handout 5, leadership strategies by fix and stage. And so those were all sent to you through the file transfer library, and they're also on the blog. And they will also be posted on the Collaborate. I know that we're posting a lot of things in a lot of different places. We're trying to just have them everywhere, so no matter what your technology is or your firewalls may be, you're able to access those materials. So today it is actually just me, but with us will also be, eventually will be Arlisa Ledbetter. She's our newest team member. She's a former ELA specialist here at MSDE, and today she's at the ELA briefing. And she's helped align and revise and develop different resources to the MCCRs. And before she joined MSDE, she was an English department chair with Baltimore County Public Schools. And like me, she has worked with both middle and high school level classes. And I'm Melissa Finkel. I'm the one who sends you a ton of different emails. I'll be working with your schools, a lot of your schools throughout the school year. I'm a former Montgomery County English and theater teacher, theater director, field hockey, and forensics coach, and whatever other thing they decided we should try at school that year. I have a background in communications, graphic design, and education policy, and I am the primary contact for all things FAME. You should also now be communicating primarily through your MSDE liaison, unless you have a major course issue, and you can still send that to me. But if Kyla Dunn is your point person, she can fix those issues for you as well. So each of these 4 leadership sessions, are designed to support you in your role as a leader. So our work together is focused on your role as a leader and exploring the groundwork necessary for successful implementation of formative assessment in your school's classroom. So we're going to go over our hopes and fears at this point. If you could go ahead and type into the chat box or share via microphone or telephone, David, your name, one hope you have for implementing formative assessment at your school, and one fear you have about implementing formative assessment. And so you can either go ahead and type that in the chat, or if you have the phone or microphone, please go ahead and share those right now.
Melissa, is there anybody else phoning in? Okay.
Nope. Thank you, David. Go ahead and share.
My name's Steve Bortz. I'm the assistant principal at Oklahoma Road Middle School in Carroll County. And one of the biggest things that we wanted to do as a school is to look at formative assessment and really understand why formative assessment needs to drive instruction within the classroom in order to meet the needs of all the learners that we see in a day.
And your fear?
My fear is that some teachers might find this to be a little bit overwhelming, and I don't want people to drop out of the program because I think it is very valuable for us as an educational system.
Great. Lindsay is with Lockerman Middle School in Caroline County. So just to reiterate, as we've said many times, we have people participating from all across the state. Or we have, you're calling in from Carroll County. We have Brian King from Charles County. We have Lindsay from Caroline. And we have Stacy from, I believe, MacArthur Middle School in Anne Arundel County. Lindsay says that I hope that our teachers find that formative assessments are useful and drive instruction. I fear that our teachers feel like it's just one other thing to do, and I think that is something that has been reflected, really working on how to make this something that seems integrated with all of our other work. Stacy, are you able to type in the chat box and share your hopes and your fears? I'm not sure what's happening. So, Brian, are you able to go ahead and type in the chat and share your hopes and fears? I see typing. Okay. Wonderful. Ken and Brian. So if you guys wanted to share your hopes and fears for implementing this year, I'm going to move the slide forward, but please continue typing and I'll share out with the group. So just to go over the components, I know that we've discussed and shared many times the different components of FAME, but we also want to share with you the leadership support design and how that integrates with all of the different components. So there's several mutually reinforcing components of the FAME design. So these involve the leadership support, the teacher support through the online learning modules and face-to-face COP meetings, as well as real-time implementation efforts in the classroom. One of the challenges for leaders who may not have participated in the Summer Institute or are not participating in the online modules, and I know that some of you have said that you are participating in online modules, so kudos to you, is to keep the communication flowing across these realms. So the online leadership support sessions, both pre-session asynchronous, which is on your own, and synchronous webinars were developed to mirror some of the key knowledge, content, and materials introduced during the online modules and community of practice sessions. Because school leaders and teachers are on a parallel track, however, does not mean that everyone will end up at exactly the same place. So communication will be critical to implementation, and the deeper the implementation, the greater the need for communication. So it's really important to keep those lines of communication open between you and your facilitator. So Ken and Brian, our hope is FAME encourages our teachers to move towards the role of facilitators of learning. And again, our fear is it's seen as just another thing needing to be done. Wonderful. So our leadership support design, this probably looks kind of similar to the support design or the design that you've seen before for all of our different module components. So they each include an asynchronous pre-session and a subsequent synchronous session. And I hate that terminology, but the current webinars are synchronous sessions, and each has a different topical focus. So the topics for sessions 2, 3, and 4 align directly with the content included in the first 2 COP online modules. So if you don't have that time to go through every single module and look at all of the content, our sessions will align and give you a preview, basically, of a lot of the work that they're doing. And so the session design that you see here, which is a little chain of events, each of the 4 sessions is preceded by an asynchronous pre-session. The asynchronous session, which you can complete on your own time schedule, and we will have the next step posted by this Friday. I apologize for that first really quick turnaround. They're designed to support knowledge building and reflecting about the key attributes of formative assessment, how they look in practice, and your leadership successes and challenges with implementing these. Asynchronous activities, which include postings, viewing and responding to brief videos of formative assessment and practice, and reflective tasks, will typically take a total of 45 to 60 minutes to complete, and will prepare you for discussions about formative assessment implementation during the 90-minute synchronous session to follow. At the close of each synchronous session, you'll be asked to identify a next action step that makes sense for advancing and supporting formative assessment in the following synchronous session. This provides a chain of connected learning experiences to support and sustain your leadership efforts as you work collectively to explore how best to lead the implementation of formative assessment practices at each of your schools. So I'm just going to quickly touch upon a few of these different tools that we have. We have the chat, video, audio, raising hand and respond, group breakouts, questions, polls, and file download. So these sessions are really designed to be very interactive. We're going to put you in breakout rooms. When we have larger groups, you're going to have the opportunity to talk, to share, to discuss with your colleagues. And you're expected to be busy during these sessions, so plan to put your email and phone messages aside while we work together once a month. So your session materials, please make sure that you bring these session materials with you. You have them. I already discussed them, touched upon them. Any notes, questions, or issues that surface during the pre-session. The pre-session participant guide with the completed questionnaire and chart. Enabling factors supporting formative assessment implementation, which I have shared with you. And then the materials that I have pushed out to you, or you can find on the blog, the session agenda, the PowerPoint slides if you want to follow along. Handout 1.4, which is the Fix and Implementation Stages Overview, and Handout 1.5, Leadership Strategies by Fix and Stage. So an overarching goal of these online leadership support sessions is to help you understand and develop implementation approaches, both within this leadership community of practice and in your own school context. This means continually reflecting and responding to these 3 questions that you see here and that we touched upon during summer leadership. So where are we headed, or where are we going? Where are we now? And how do we close the gap? We'll see these used to structure the asynchronous pre-sessions as well as these synchronous sessions. So let's now begin by reviewing the learning goals for this session. So our learning goals that you see here, deepening the understanding, these are the targeted learning goals for session 1, including both the pre-session and this real-time session. So I'd like you to read over these learning goals and go ahead and type in the chat how these goals relate to your own goals for the session. So deepening understanding of the attributes of effective formative assessment, developing a more nuanced and contextualized vision for full implementation, building awareness and knowledge of factors that enable successful implementation, and anticipating and addressing challenges to leading and supporting teachers. So go ahead and type your response, how these relate to your own goals for the classroom. And David, if you want to go ahead and jump in and share how these relate to your own goals. Sorry. Can you go ahead and take a look at these goals and reflect upon how they're similar to your own? So deepening the understanding of the attributes, developing a more nuanced and contextualized vision, building awareness and knowledge, and anticipating and addressing challenges. So I see a couple people are typing right now. And David, if you want to go ahead and just verbally share out with us.
I think the first one was the deepened understanding of the attributes of effective formative assessment. We've already met once as a group, and those are the different components that we really looked at, were those 5 things that we talked about the first day at our meetings over the summer. So I really think to look at those different attributes and to really clearly understand them and how to effectively implement them within the classroom to improve formative assessments and to drive instruction. So that's basically our big goal of what we have for this school year. Am I still in? Hello?
Sorry. I took myself off the microphone.
Oh, it's okay. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I
that
didn't
was
get
my
cut off.
fault. I took myself off.
Okay, no,
so
you're
there
fine.
wasn't an echo.
No, you're
Never
fine.
came back.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. Sorry. It's gonna,
Never mind. I just wanted to make sure I didn't cut off.
this is my third one today. So our introductions and overview. Where are we headed?
Yeah.
Where are we now? How can we close the gap? And looking ahead. And I just wanted to point out that the success criteria that we just looked at, they were not in ICANN statements, but we definitely encourage you to encourage your teachers to use those ICANN statements, or I am able to, with your success criteria. So we're going to start out with, where are we headed? So the first thing we want to do is reconnect to some of the pre-session tasks by exploring and building on some of our individual reflections. So our aim within this leadership community is to build a more specific vision for what formative assessment implementation looks like in your classroom. We're going to review the video from our pre-session asynchronous materials. So our first challenge is to begin to articulate a vision of full implementation of formative assessment. So what will it look like and what will we see and hear when we walk into classrooms and when we walk into classrooms later in all of our schools? To do this, we'll draw on the video clip you responded to the pre-session activity. We'll review the video together and a few of the comments made, then we'll break into small groups to share our personal vision and begin to shape a collective vision for full implementation of formative assessment. So this part's a bit tricky. What I'm going to do is take you on a web tour to our blog where you will view the video on your own. Unfortunately, it just does not work very well to try to view it from our actual system here. So if you can go ahead and do that, I'll also guide you to it and give you enough time to view the video. And it should be on the administrators and leaders. I'm going to post that both in the chat and guide you there. David, if you want to just go ahead and view it from there.
Okay. So I'm on the blog. I'm under administrator and leaders, and I have participant agenda, enabling factors.
Keep scrolling down, and it should be the
implementation.
Yep, elementary and middle school level video.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This webcast abstract provides an overview of a full webcast menu, which examines
Okay, so I finished the video on my end. If you could go ahead and raise your hand when you are done, or just go ahead and chat with us. Okay.
I'm finished.
We'll just pause another minute. Oops. For Lindsay, and I think that Kenneth is signing back in. All right, so we can go ahead and start with our discussion. So what is our personal vision for full implementation? What will we see and hear among FAME participants, and what will students be doing? What are the common elements of our vision? And what needs further learning and discussion. So just take a moment and think about what your vision is for full implementation and how it relates to some of the things that you saw in these videos. The discussions that were on Blackboard were great. I could see a lot of connections between what you want to see in your classrooms and what you saw in the video that we just viewed. So David, if you want to go ahead and share as Ken logs in. And
well, a couple things I would definitely say that I would like to hear teachers talking about more is that they really need to do that clearly, articulating the pathway that students need to follow in order to meet with success towards that learning goal. I think there needs to be a lot more descriptive feedback to students rather than having like check marks and things like that. So those are two big things that I would really like to hear the teachers talking about, as well as much more of the self and peer assessment. I feel that we don't do that really well, and I really think that we may give a student a checklist and they kind of just go through the motions. And I think that needs to become something that students are comfortable with, that they're taught how to do it, and that it is very meaningful, and they really are helping students along their path in their learning. So I would like to see a lot more self and peer assessment within the classroom, and again, it being productive. I really want to see those clear learning goals set up for students, and the feedback that teachers are giving students is very meaningful, and it allows them to look forward in their learning.
Great. Reflecting on some of the things that are written, I think a lot of what I saw was really talking about collaboration and how the lesson allowed for students to collaborate with each other in a lot of different ways. And they really focused on that peer feedback. That was a major theme running through all of your threads. Let's see if I can touch upon Kenneth. Not sure where he is. And I think also the discussion about peer feedback, how to actually use it. The fact that students are able to make that decision whether or not to use the peer feedback and are taught how to really assess whether the feedback is something that they should incorporate or not. I mean, because that is a big part of it as well. And so in your mind, what needs further learning and discussion? I think if I'm reflecting back what you've said, I think getting teachers to the point where they create those really clear learning goals and success criteria and are able to assist students in also being able to state what their success criteria is and work towards it and have that collaboration. Ken, you're back on. That's great. So we can move on. So we've thought about where we're headed. We've reflected on the discussion board and thought about where you want to go. And now we need to assess where we are now. So if we think of our vision of implementation as a destination on a map, 200 West Baltimore, where we are right now, how do we get there? So it depends on where you are right now. It's really what it comes down to. We've all used mapping applications, GPS to get directions. We know that getting to West Baltimore Street is going to depend on a few things. Number one, our current location or where we're starting from. And number two are the tools and the resources that we have for moving from one place to the other. For formative assessment, we translate these to say, what is our current context and what systems, structures, and supports can we draw on to help us move towards that destination? Unless we're familiar with the answers to these two questions, we'll not be able to map out a path to full implementation of formative assessment at our particular schools. So let's connect once again to some of the pre-session work. So this was an optional activity, the pre-session. We realized that we gave you a lot to do in a short time, and so it was optional, but we're going to go ahead and revisit it. The enabling factors, 9 factors that are associated with higher degrees of implementation of effective formative assessment, suggesting that if attention is sustained on the development of these factors, getting to full implementation with formative assessment may be easier. So while each of you will most likely be taking a different road, we do want to engage you with each other about the road you're taking and why, so you can be informed by each other's thinking and experiences. Please take a few minutes to read and complete the graphic organizer to reflect on the extent to which your school has these enabling factors in place. When you've completed the questionnaire, please raise your hand. We will then respond to the poll. If you want to take about 3 or 4 minutes to go ahead and skim the article and go through the questionnaire. And that file is handout 1.3, just to remind you. Okay, I'll give you just another minute and go ahead and assess. I'm going to go ahead and push the poll out to you. Please determine A, B, or C, where are you most fully underway? Knowledge and use of educational data, knowledge and use of principles of standards-based education, or structures and practices that support change process. Lindsay, are you able to use the polling tool? See if it works for you. You should be able to see a letter there. We have two. David, do you want to chime in?
I'm looking at it's the questions that you're looking at right now are the sliding scale that's on 1.3. Is that correct? Like the not yet started part of the way. Okay.
Well, we are
So
looking
we're
at.
how.
Yeah, we're on the slide. Page, I think it's slide 22, most fully underway. So which of the enabling factors in the different columns are most fully underway? Knowledge and use of educational data, knowledge and use of principles of standards-based education, or structures and practices that support change process.
Okay. And you're on slide 21, you said, correct? In the PowerPoint?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. But which of the 9 enabling factors have you focused on the most? That one?
Yes. Okay, so it seems that we have a variety. We have C, I think is the most predominant one. People are most comfortable with the structures and practices that support the change process, which is great.
Yes, I agree with that.
So now we're going to move on to the opposite. Which of these is the least underway in your school? If you could go ahead and chime in with the letter and the poll response. Underneath your name, you should see a big A.
I would say B for me. Knowledge and use of principles of standard-based education.
B, okay, I see two. So it's 2 B's so far.
I'm sorry, I was kind of behind. I was looking at, I didn't realize, so I apologize for being slow on the last one.
It's okay.
My first webinar I ever did, so.
Oh, okay, well welcome. I'm glad that you could join us for this one. I do know that there's a lot of firewalls in Carroll County, so we'll see what we can do to work on that. I'll actually be there Friday. I'll see how I can fix some of that.
Cool.
Okay, so we have, let's see, I think mostly B is what we're least comfortable with. Knowledge and use and principles of standards-based education. So it's great that you're aware of these things and able to determine that, because it makes it a lot easier to move forward. So we're establishing where we are now. So what I'd like you to discuss right now and share either in the chat or if you are able to get the microphone working. Let's see. Which of the 9 enabling factors have you focused on the most in your school improvement efforts, and what were those efforts? And which 1 to 2 factors, if strengthened further, would help to facilitate successful formative assessment implementation at your school? So what might you do next? If you do want to call in so that you can participate verbally, I'm posting the call in number, the phone number there with the PIN. You're welcome to join in by phone if you would like to as well. Oh, wonderful. So if you could go ahead and post in the chat, which of these have you focused most upon in earlier school improvement efforts? And what was the effort? And which factors would help to facilitate successful formative assessment implementation at your school? And David, if at any point you want to just go ahead and talk and share, that would be fine as well.
Sure, thanks. I'm writing some stuff down.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. We focused on content and performance standards. Done a lot of PV on CCRSS, yep. Focused considerable time and effort on content and performance standards. I think that's something that we're hearing echoed across the board from high school, elementary, and now middle school as well. If you want to give some input on what might you do next. I know that there are a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different focuses going on in every different county. So what are you working on now? What are you looking at next?
I guess for me, in the past, we've done a lot of the under structure and practices that support change process, the collaborative teacher processes and supports. We've given teachers a lot of time to meet together to discuss the different forms of assessment that they're using within the classroom. We started looking into CFIP this year, and we're going to start putting that into implementation, which I think will really help the the driving the formative assessment piece. So the collaborative teacher process and supports is very important to us, and then next steps is to take the FAME and look at the CFIP process and fully implement it within our school, so we can really look at those different assessments and find out what we need to do in order to help that student that doesn't understand the information, or we need to be putting in different extensions for the kids that are far exceeding expectations. So those are kind of like our next steps that we have, which would also continue with that collaborative piece. And then and I think with that as well, going on letter B with the knowledge and use of principles and standards-based education, if we're all using similar assessments within the classroom, I think it's going to really, we're going to be able to hit the needs of the standard-based instruction, and then with the standard-based assessment as a school and as a county.
Great. And I think I'm seeing another theme. We're working on finding common assessments that we can use to drive instruction, working on common grading strategies that align with standards-based instruction and assessment. It's great. I think Kenneth is typing something as well. Our next steps are to focus on how peer feedback and collaborative planning can move our staff collectively to the next level. Wonderful. I apologize if my voice keeps going in and out. Talking a little too loudly this weekend, apparently. So how can we close that gap? We've identified where we are and where we want to go. So how can we close that gap? So what can we as leaders do in order to strengthen our current work and move toward the next stage of implementation? So during this next activity, we'll be exploring the document handout 1.4, the Fix and Implementation Stages Overview, which is available in the download section and on our blog. So there are 3 methods to support the use of programs in real-world settings in order to achieve positive outcomes for children and their families. Letting it happen, helping it happen, and making it happen. And so the role of a good implementation team is to make it happen. In order to make it happen, that team must navigate the complexity involved in new ways of doing things, which we know is a struggle. So change is a process. We've said this many times. Formative assessment's a process. Any type of change is also a process. It's not a single event. Implementation occurs in stages, and someone must plan and negotiate the journey through these stages to engage and support practitioners and effectively launch the work. Implementation team members must ensure that those doing the work have the skills and support structures to feel confident and confident using the innovation as intended. So starting with an awareness that implementation occurs in stages really allows for intentional planning in that change process. When we pay attention to the stages, we can reduce wasted time and resources, we can match our activities to that stage, and increase the likelihood of moving successfully through the stage and on to the next one. We can prepare for the activities and challenges that we'll face in the next stage, and we can increase the likelihood of sustained and improved use of educational processes. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the stages of implementation, the different stages, are reflected as well in the formative assessment process. So if we're looking at how we can close that gap, I'm going to take just a moment and go ahead and read through that handout 1.4, the overview. So it can take from, we say, 3 to 5 years to fully and successfully operationalize an evidence-based program, practice, or effective educational innovation. So according to Fixen's model, the process includes 4 stages that can lead to the long-term survival, sustainability, and effectiveness of any innovation. Stages aren't linear, and each one does not have a crisp beginning or end. For example, there's times when an organization will move among stages due to changes in staff, funding, leadership, or unsuccessful attempts at employing the innovation with high fidelity. There are key components and processes to pay attention to during each of the stages. These can guide a systematic and intentional approach for managing system change and building sustainability for the new initiative. So go ahead and take a few minutes to skim and read pages 3 to 5 of handout 4, or 1.4, to gain a view of the first stages of implementation, and consider which stage best represents where your school is in relation to implementation of formative assessment. When you're done, you can go ahead and raise your hand. Once I've seen a few hands raised, we'll move on to discuss this. Okay, we have our first star student. Wonderful. Okay, so I just want you to quickly think about what stage of implementation seems to be the best fit for your school right now. Just go ahead and share that in the chat box. Just go ahead and type the stage that you're at, and then we'll move on and talk about the strategies for the stages.
I would say for me at this point in time, we're between stage 1 and 2.
Okay, so we've got 2 responses. So you'll notice basically where most people fall at the moment. So if you move along to our next handout, handout 1.5, Leadership Strategies by Fixen Stage, describes some key considerations for the first phases of FAME implementation. You should recognize this from the Summer Institute sessions, and this will also be in the first online module session. Most of your schools are engaged in that exploration and adoption stage or program installation. So that is pretty much where you should all fall at the moment. let's see, your school may be further along. Wherever you are is okay. We realize that everybody's starting in a different place, and everybody is starting in a different place, both with FAME and with formative assessment in general and standards-based grading. So wherever you're starting is not a problem. Just to touch upon this really quickly, the first column shows the time frame when the stage is likely to occur. It doesn't mean it will at this time period. The second column reflects those questions that many of your teachers will be asking at this time. There may be many others, I'm sure, that they are asking as well. The third column, some of the leadership practices that support this stage, generally speaking, for any given implementation. And then the final column provides more specific examples of leadership practices that are useful for supporting this stage of formative assessment implementation in particular. So thinking about these different stages, we want to move forward on to the next slide, how we can close the gap. So in our group here, we're going to have a discussion about which stage of implementation your school is in, which we've addressed, basically 1, 2, or in between the two. So I'd like you to share out what challenges or issues are emerging for you, what support do teachers need at this point, and what leadership strategies and practices might you use, either from this chart or elsewhere, to strengthen your current status and move implementation toward the next stage. So if you could go ahead and share out in the chat box. And for those of you that have your, now I have that capability. Do you want to go ahead and type in the chat box what challenges are emerging for you and what support do teachers need at this point? David, if you want to go ahead and share out, you can talk at any time.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of typing, not a lot of words. So what challenges or issues are emerging?
Not a lot of typing.
Sorry. And what support do teachers need at this point?
I would say with the teachers that are in the cohort right now, which I have 4, that we're kind of in between stage 1 and stage 2. They're very eager to get started, and they're very eager to start the modules and things like that. And I think that honestly I'll have more information about what they actually need after we meet again in October and discuss Module 1. I think I'll be able to take a better needs assessment at that time.
Okay. Kenneth, make sure that you're typing in the main chat room. You keep accidentally just messaging me. So let's see what Stacy said. So we have, our teachers need to have leaders who know how and when to coach and how to monitor what is important. That's great. My cohort seems to be on the ball and really want to be successful. They're in very different places as far as their implementation. And Kenneth said, exploration mostly, the challenge we're having is finding the time for teachers to discuss and learn about assessments. Make sure they're using that COP time, that sub time. We recently had a change in leadership, so we're still norming and deciding what implementation of anything will look like. We thought we had it worked out before school, but once everything got started, it wasn't quite what others expected. Our leaders are great. Yep. And we realize that everything is constantly changing in school, so that will be something that happens, and it is important to have those group norms as well. Lindsay, teachers are just starting to watch Module 1. We're meeting October 14th for our first COP. Great.
My question is this, Melissa. In the other schools, how many teachers do people actually have participating? What's like the average?
It varies so much. We have Kenneth,
right.
You're still typing in the private chat room. I'm going to keep pasting it into the main one. Some schools have about 30. I have a high school that I'm working with in Worcester County, Worcester Technical High School, so it's a specialized high school that has their entire staff of about 30 or so teachers. There are other schools that have 3
right.
staff members, so it very much varies.
Right, which makes it a lot harder to do, like when we're talking about like the full implementation piece of a school, because I only have 3 other teachers and or actually 4 other teachers doing it, so it's kind of hard to say that this is going to be on a whole full-scale school effort compared to just what a couple of teachers are learning. And then my goal is next year is to have them go out and explain the information to other staff members.
And that is actually the goal. We will be sharing that information probably in the 2nd or 3rd webinar, but we are actually, our goal this year was really just to be small scale. It's really, just a sort of pilot cohort, testing it out, getting comfortable with it as a concept. And next year is really moving towards more of a full-scale implementation. Some schools chose to do full school because, they had already been working on formative assessment. Some schools, Worcester Tech, because they're a specialized school, they don't have a lot of the other initiatives happening that some schools do.
Right.
So that's why they chose to do full school. And for them, it's Lindsay just shared, we have about 20 teachers who volunteered to participate. So right now we really are looking at pilots at schools and then expanding out within the school as well as within the county. And that's why in some counties there are already county level people participating, partnering up with schools, like at Kenneth's school. I hope he realizes this, but Charles County is going to be participating along with them, just sort of viewing the modules, popping in on a few COPs to see what it's like, and hopefully being able to support the schools next year at their county level. So it is different. It is, unfortunately, that is true. It's very different at almost every school.
Okay.
So thank you for that perfect segue into the next slide. Multiple pathways. So given where you're going, where you are now, and the possible responses and practices you can employ, what we want to do right now is think about next steps. And Kenneth just replied in the private chat, it's cool that they're doing that with us. Yep. You guys are very lucky. So I want you to think about what is one concrete step that you'll commit to taking between now and next session to really move this work forward. And there are many different things that you can do. So go ahead and think about what a next step might be and paste it in the chat room. And you'll eventually use this next step. You can go ahead and type that in the main chat. We'll eventually use that next step to, oh, that's why. Go ahead and try it again, Kenneth, to type in the main room. You'll eventually use this next step as part of the action planning tool that is now on your screen. This action planning tool will be something that you use throughout the fall follow-up and afterwards to really help monitor your school's progression through FAME and find a way to connect with your facilitators and make sure that you move the work forward. So at the close of each of these leadership sessions, you'll be asked to respond to at least the 3 items shown in bold. And this will be on your own. I will be sending an email afterwards with all of these materials. You are encouraged to share this with us if you have the capability through Google Drive or Dropbox, because not really for us to monitor what you're doing in your work, but it really helps us in doing our own program evaluation and looking at the supports that we can provide. So what is the immediate goal that you've identified? What are 1 or 2 specific actions that you'll take before the next leadership session? And finally, what might be clear evidence of those actions that you pursued? And so really, sadly, I think this ends up looking a lot like an SLO and artifacts for those SLOs. So what is the step that you'll take? And I think this is Lindsay. Yep, Lindsay shared, I will watch Module 1 and be part of the COP. And that's great. A few other examples, you know, having a record of the teachers' community of practice sessions, an annotated faculty or team meeting agenda, highlighting teachers' learning opportunities with formative assessment, notes from informal check-ins with teachers regarding their initial experiences in the FAME online course, and plan actions based on feedback. One of the principals in our elementary school session said that he was going to do sort of a management by walking around, checking in with the FAME teachers, seeing where they are and any concerns they might have. Some leadership team meeting minutes documenting the development of common understandings and consistent messages. So I think a lot of these are things that you probably have already done with your leadership. A summary of leadership team responses to the Enabling Factors survey, if you did want to share that out with them. And other evidence of implementation progress that you've collected. So you'll be asked in the pre-session work for session 2 to post and describe a piece of evidence showing progress on your goal, or even better, the impact of your actions, and then to read and comment on others' postings. So we ask you to think ahead now to the evidence that might be relevant. The other sections, 3, 4, and 5, are really for you to complete on your own or following the session as time allows. These are for you to consider what else do you need in order to do the work, who else could be brought into leading and supporting it, and how will you work with the community of practice facilitators to align leadership and learning work. And for number 3, what do you need to know more about to accomplish this? This is something that you can reach out to your liaison, your MSD liaison, to gain more knowledge. We have the wonderful WestEd crew to provide all of the content knowledge that you could possibly need. Who else should you engage, whether that should be your school leadership team or people at the county level, your staff development team at the county, or other people at the county level that we can help bring into that conversation. And then thinking about how you'll work with your COP facilitators to align leadership and COP efforts. So looking ahead, some of the different things that we will be sending out to you and that I will be pasting in the chat right now that we would love you to complete, but if you do not have time right now, the action planning template, which I'm pasting right now, and which will be shared with you, and the related tasks. Today's session evaluation, we ask that you complete the evaluation each time because that helps us improve. I think probably some feedback that we might receive will be the technology being an issue, so that is something that we will be working on. And completing the asynchronous pre-session 2 tasks, which will be shared by Friday at the latest. Our next session is October 9th from 3 to 4:30. I ask that you put that time aside again, and I appreciate that you are here this time. Please remember to set aside about an hour ahead of time to complete these tasks and share on the discussion board. And when you go to the action plan hot link, what you can do, and I will detail this in the email if you're not familiar with Google Docs, you can go ahead and copy it to your own Google Drive or download it. There will be directions for that for the less tech savvy. So again, thank you for joining me today. I hope this was a fruitful conversation. Are there any questions or concerns or feedback you'd like to give before we go? go ahead and type it in the chat, or David, if you'd like to go ahead and talk.
Okay, just the one thing, I was going to look at the action plan, the evaluation, the hot links that are there, and hot links are not working for me.
Oh, no, they won't work on the slides. If you're able to view the slides, the hot links won't work.
Okay.
So they will be emailed out to you.
Okay, cool. All right, make sure.
Sorry about that. There are many limitations.
Oh, no, you're fine.
And I'm genuinely hoping that by next month we will have acquired a new system that is a little better than Blackboard Collaborate, but the process here is slow and arduous, so we're working towards that.
Oh, I completely understand. Everything was fine. Thank you very much for taking the time to help me out with everything too today.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions, thank you for joining me. I will stay in this room for about 5 more minutes just in case you have a question that you want to message me about or email. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
That's okay, Kenneth. I'm just reading your chat right now. I totally understand that, and we will work on that. We will figure something out. And I will be actually, I hope you saw my email, I will be in Charles County, I think it's in 2 weeks, I think it's the 3rd, working with them. So maybe after that I could pop down to your school if you guys have some time and come see the teachers and maybe help you work with this technology that is just a nightmare for us too. Okay, great. I'll be in touch. Thanks.